Hello. Christmas is one of the great feasts of the Christian Church. Most people are familiar with its form in the Western Church, but today with me is Dr. Mary Cunningham, who's going to talk about the Feast of Christmas in the Eastern Orthodox churches. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Mary, what is the significance of Christmas in the Eastern churches?
The significance of Christmas, which is regarded really as the second most important feast after Pascha or Easter, is that it represents, of course, the beginning of the incarnation of Christ, that he was born to a virgin, became a man while remaining also divine, and entered the world as a tiny infant, as all other human beings do. But it has great theological significance, which I think is celebrated with great solemnity in the Orthodox Church, with perhaps less focus on the crib and the sort of celebration of the story of the baby Jesus that we get in the West. I think there's much more emphasis on God himself, the Son of God, entering the world, and reflection on the great paradox that he remains both human and divine in this incarnation, and the implications of this for the rest of creation and for humankind.
Can you talk us through how the Eastern churches then celebrate the Feast of Christmas?
Yes, well, there is a great deal of preparation before Christmas. There's a 40-day fast, just as there is before Pascha or Easter, which means that people don't eat meat, fish, or any animal products. They try to reflect and really renew their life of prayer in this time in preparation for this great feast. In the run-up to Christmas, there are also various Sundays that lead up to the celebration that will take place on the 25th of December, which celebrate or commemorate the forebears of Christ, his ancestors in the Old Testament, and also there's a Sunday in which all the righteous people who lived before Christ are remembered. So thinking about the way in which the old dispensation is leading up to the new is part of that period of Advent or preparation. It contrasts quite a bit, I think, with the West, which tends to have a period of celebration, of meals out and overeating before Christmas even arrives. The Orthodox would find that an odd practice in that they wait to feast until the day itself.
Well, of course, we found ourselves in the bizarre situation that Christmas ends, the Christmas celebrations begin sometime early in December. They reach a crescendo in the 3 or 4 days before the 25th, and then on the 25th itself, if you watch television as I did last year, on the evening of the 25th, we're already into New Year sales. Yes. So Christmas almost ends on Christmas Day. So can you talk us through the difference between that attitude that the 25th is the end of a season, which is of course a modern idea in the West, and how it's seen in the East?
It's seen as the beginning of a period of celebration in the Orthodox churches. The period of Christmas lasts for some days afterwards. There are special services both on the day. There's of course the liturgy and all the what's called the forefeast of days leading up to Christmas, and then special celebrations in the church in the days after Christmas.
So 40 days of fasting and preparation and reflecting on the period before the time of Jesus concludes on the 25th, on the 24th of December.
Yes.
And then the 25th is the beginning of Christmas.
That's right.
And how long does Christmas last?
I think there are some days, 8 days, in which we continue to celebrate the feast, and then there's a leave-taking of the feast. But it all leads up to and connects with, I think, the Feast of Epiphany or Theophany, which we will be talking about in another episode. This is the 12 days of Christmas, I think, are taken seriously in the Orthodox Church, that this is a period of celebration which begins with the 25th. It doesn't end, as you said.
There's one interesting thing from the Western point of view. We're used to a calendar that goes back to the late 16th century, and it's a calendar that was first promulgated by Pope Gregory in Rome, and it was based on calculations that he had commissioned. The Eastern churches often work on a different calendar. Can you talk about the two calendars?
Yes. Many churches in the Eastern Orthodox world do continue to use the old Julian calendar, which is the more ancient one, established by Julius Caesar, which is different by 13 days from the Western or Gregorian calendar, which, as you rightly said, was initiated in, I think it's 1582. The reason that the Gregorian calendar was introduced was that the days of the solar year had got out of sync with the actual solstice, so it was moved back. And many churches didn't accept that change, and so they still adhere to the old calendar, which is 13 days later. And this is why you'll find the Russian church, many of the Oriental churches, celebrating Christmas on the 7th of January. But for them, of course, that is the 25th of December.
But for some Eastern churches, they will be celebrating the 25th of December at the same time that Western Christians are celebrating the 25th of December.
The Greek Orthodox Church largely does celebrate on the 25th by the new calendar, as do many of the other Orthodox churches now. So there is a slight split among the Orthodox churches as to whether they adhere to the old calendar or have adopted the new one.
Since we're talking about calendars, needless to say, in the Gospels it doesn't say what day Jesus was born. Would you like to say something about the origins of the 25th of December as the date chosen for the celebration of Christmas?
Yes, well, we don't know precisely when this took place, but in Rome there was a celebration of the birth of the unconquered sun god, which was celebrated on the 25th of December. This was renewed in 274 by the Emperor Aurelian, I think. And it's very likely that the Christian Church, in an attempt to sort of, as it were, baptize the pagan festival and take it over, chose that date, seeing the symbolism of Christ as the Sun, S-U-N, of righteousness, who brings light into the world, superseding the festival of the sun god, also S-U-N, which is a kind of joint symbolism and would make many pagans happily move to Christmas and see its theological Christian meaning. There's another tradition, though, which suggests that possibly the date was chosen because it's 9 months after roughly when the Annunciation may have been celebrated. Although we don't think there was an early Feast of the Annunciation, it may have been associated with Pascha at the end of March. And I think Augustine and a homily attributed to John Chrysostom suggests that this was the reason. It's more likely, I think, though, that from about the early 4th century, Christians began to celebrate the birth of Christ on the same day as the pagan sun god was celebrated.
This, of course, is the ancient is a debate that goes back at least 200 years between those who argue that it's to do with one religion replacing another religion, and the other one being the calculation hypothesis, and vast gallons of of scholarly ink have been spilled on this problem. I actually agree with you that it is more likely that since the first mention of Christmas is in the West, and the Feast of the Unconquered Sun is a Roman festival, that it is the case that if people are used to celebrating at a certain time, and that people are becoming Christian, then you need to actually you need to give a new meaning to the festival time, because people are going to have a festival anyway, so you as it were piggyback on the festival, and go, instead of it being the unconquered sun, it becomes the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness. What do you say to people then who say, oh well, Christmas isn't a Christian feast, it's just a pagan feast?
Well, I would disagree with that. I think Christianity took on many traditions and ideas of the pagan world. It simply sees that there is a correlation between the feasts. I think there was also a desire to link this feast with the change of seasons, with that all-important rebirth of the light. It's a period when there's very little light and then the sun begins to come back. So it gives an added dimension to something that had meaning in the pagan world, but what an additional meaning it gives, that this is about God entering creation and giving it light. And the symbolism of the hymnography conveys this idea, which is connected with the change of season, with God entering creation, with humanity and creation being sanctified and illuminated by the birth of God in our world.
And of course, as you say, it's not really a birthday celebration, but the need of believers to reflect on the mystery of God having come, and in the words of St. John, having pitched his tent in our midst.
That's exactly right, yes.
Mary, thank you very much.